Hello and welcome to this tutorial video for the Space Combat Kit for Unity, where I'll be showing you how to create enemy waves in your game. So I have a demo scene here which you'll be able to find under the Space Combat Kit, Demos, Scenes, Simple Demos, Waves, SCK Simple Demo Waves Scene. Now this scene demonstrates the basic system of how to create enemy waves in your game. So let's get right into it. So the first thing you have to add to the scene is a new game object and add a wave controller component. Now a wave controller controls a single wave, which is basically a group of ships that spawn at about the same time. If you look in the inspector, you'll see a bunch of settings here. The first one is a list of spawners, which are the basically transforms. We'll take a look at them in a moment. Basically, they're transforms that represent a single spawn point for a single ship. In this case, a piloted ship. So it spawns a pilot, spawns a ship, and puts them together. So you immediately have a piloted ship flying around in your scene. So these are the spawners for this wave. Then we've got the spawns parent, which is this game object, and that's basically the handle for moving all the spawn points around, which we'll see in a moment how that's used. Then you have spawn on enable, which means that if you check that, the wave will spawn when the scene starts, or when this game object is enabled. Then we have the spawn intervals. This basically lets you specify an interval between each spawn in the wave. So you might have a bunch of ships coming in one after the other. And because, as we'll see in a minute, there's kind of warp-in functionality on the spawner, you can make the ships come in kind of one after the other or spaced out by an interval. Then we have the camera view spawning. Now what that does is spawns the wave directly in front of the camera. So for example, if you want to spawn enemies and you don't want the player to miss the sight of seeing them flying in, you can check this box here, the spawn in camera view. This is the camera that you're referencing, and the spawn distance from camera. So basically this gets the group of spawns and moves it in this case 500 units in front of the camera, and then spawns the ships at that position. And then you have this event for when the wave is destroyed, so you can run your own functionality when that happens, and we'll go over this functionality in a minute that I've added for this demo. For now, let's move on to the spawners. Now on this battleship spawn, you'll see this piloted vehicle spawner component. This component can be used on its own and spawned on enable, basically when the scene starts or when this component is enabled. Then you have a list of pilot prefabs. These are basically game agents with AI input already added to the prefab. So they're basically ready to go as soon as they get into a ship. They're ready to fly around and do whatever they do. So that's the pilot's list. And this is the vehicles list. Now you can put one vehicle in each of these, one vehicle here and one pilot in this list if you just want to specify one, or you can add more and it will choose randomly from the list. And after that you'll see warp settings, so this will warp in if you check that checkbox, which basically means that the ship will start off a certain distance behind the spawn point and warp in, landing on that spawn point. which is basically this transform right here. It represents the spawn point. So the position curve basically lets you configure the warp animation. So it goes from 0 to 1, which is basically the start position, which in this case, you'll see with the warp distance down here, is 1000 units behind the transform in the direction that the transform is pointing. And it will sort of accelerate and then decelerate onto the spawn point in this case. You can configure the curve to customize the animation for your own game. The warp time is how long it takes for the ship to go from the start position, 1000 units behind the spawn point, how long it takes to warp in through those 1000 units of distance, and that's how long it takes. Then you have the warp audio, which is basically a sound effect that you can play when the warp starts, and you can specify a delay for this audio just in case you configure that animation curve differently, or you have a longer time and you want to specify the exact point where your sound is playing. So that basically does it for the piloted vehicle spawner. You'll see on the wave controller, which represents a single wave, there's a bunch of spawners here, one for battleship and two for two fighters here. Alright, so what we have here is basically one wave consisting of a battleship and two fighters. So what if we want to create multiple waves? We can have multiple wave controller components. You could duplicate that, and then you would add a waves controller, the plural, somewhere in your scene, and this basically manages the way multiple waves are spawned in the game. So you have, let's have a look at the inspector here. We'll just file those down. We've got the waves controller component, and then we have all the individual wave controllers in a list here. And loop waves means that if you go through all the waves and you get to the end, then it will go back to the beginning. And how we do that, how we go through each wave, I'll explain in a minute. But that basically allows you to keep looping through your waves forever. So this event here, on waves destroyed, is called when all the waves have been destroyed. Specifically when the game agents have been killed for the final wave in this wave controllers list. So let's go over how we set up the timing of the wave and how the multiple waves can be spawned after each preceding wave. Each wave before has been destroyed. You might want to spawn a new one. So for that, I have created the timer component. Now this is a very flexible and generally useful script for running events when a timer runs out. So what happens here is that when the timer runs out, it basically calls the waves controller, the manager for multiple waves, and says spawn the next one. So waves controller spawn next wave here. And when the timer is finished, it also deactivates the timer text. So basically when the wave is spawning, it disables the timer text, enables the instructions to, which in this case is press space to destroy waves, so you can see what happens when each wave is destroyed. So you have also this event on timer started, so basically the timer is shown, activated when the timer is started, and the instructions are disabled. So you just have a countdown. And then you've got this on timer display updated. So all it does is pass a string representing the time, which you can send to a TextMesh Pro text, or you can send it to a UI Unity UGUI text if you want it. So you can display that on your screen. And also this timer is started on enable, so as soon as the scene starts, basically this timer starts running out. It will spawn the first wave, go through each of the waves until it reaches the end. And it basically will spawn, as we'll see here, as we go to the wave, actually the wave controller, the individual wave controller, you'll see when the wave is destroyed, it basically waits 6 seconds after you've destroyed the wave, and it starts the timer again to start the next one. And then this canvas group fader, which fades in and out this success text. So let's go and have a look at that. It's another useful component for you that you can use in a lot of different ways. Basically fades a canvas group according to an animation curve. So this will basically fade in, hold it for a little while, and then fade it out. And then you have the fade time, which is the time it takes to go from the beginning to the end of the fade animation. And that's the canvas group for this component. So basically, when the wave is destroyed, it will fade that canvas group, which is the success text, in and out. And finally, we have this destroy wave input, which basically gets this custom input generic component, which is a very useful, very handy component for creating input in your game to test or at runtime or for your player. And it has an input item, which is the space key. When you press it down, it will go down to this component, destroy all vehicles, and it will destroy all of them. So that's just a component that destroys all the vehicles in the scene, just for this demo. So probably not going to be all that useful, but it's there in case you want it. So let's run this scene and see how it all works. So they all warp in, they're flying along, you can blow them up there, show success, and then it starts the timer on the next one, and it all happens again. So this system should give you a lot of functionality and a lot of customizability for your own game. In terms of creating enemy waves and giving you the ability to decide what happens when the waves are destroyed and how your player will experience the functionality of this system. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.